Hey friends, I'm Otis Gibbs, and this is my buddy Bill Demain. He's going to tell the story behind Edgar Winter's all-time classic instrumental, Frankenstein.
Edgar Winter, I didn't really know what to expect talking to him, because I think I only really got into him in the 70s when I bought, They Only Come Out at Night and Shock Treatment. There, like a couple of records where he was sort of like glam rock there and had like great singles like Free Ride and Frankenstein. And then I knew that he had this long career afterwards, and he was an incredible musician and plays with Ringo and everything. But he turned out to be like just this kind of goofy, friendly guy who loves to laugh a lot. And he started the interview, like it was a phone interview, and he started it by yelling down the phone, "Are you ready to rock and roll?" I was like, yeah, okay. It sounded like the beginning of a live album, And he's promoting, he just made a record called Brother Johnny, which, his Johnny passed away 5 or 6 years ago. And Edgar has gotten together all these different blues guitar players and, everybody from Joe Walsh to Joe Satriani, playing Johnny Winter songs. So he was talking about his relationship with his brother, which was really touching, like you don't think about it much, but they were raised in a small town in Texas and they were, they're albinos. Like, so he said they were made fun of relentlessly until Johnny started playing the guitar. And then it was suddenly like, oh, these guys are cool, and then Edgar started playing the piano, and that was kind of how they counteracted the strangeness of how they looked in the context of just sort of a regular small town. Edgar was in a group called White Trash with his brother, and they were playing like hard blues, hard rock and blues kind of stuff. And then he formed his own group, the Edgar Winter group. This was right around the time, he said this was right around the time of, David Bowie and Elton John. And he said, I was looking at these guys and thinking like, wow, they look pretty strange, but not as strange as me. So what if I just took how I looked and kind of like amped it up a little bit? So you see the first time he was really glam, it's like he had sequins like pasted on his face and, like this sort of blue, purple eyeshadow, which was They Only Come Out at Night, which was the breakthrough, the record that made him famous. So there's a song on there, an instrumental, like a 7-minute instrumental, which is weird to think that this song became a huge hit, called Frankenstein. And Frankenstein had been kicking around for years as an instrumental that Edgar said he wrote as his entrance music when he was in White Trash. Like that Johnny would always start the show and then he would bring Edgar on, and then they would play together. And the music that the band would play when Edgar walked on was dan 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 dan, and it was a big kind of moment. So when they were recording They Only Come Out at Night, I guess they had sort of gotten near the end of the sessions and they needed more material. And Rick Derringer, who was in White Trash and now in the Edgar Winter group, said, what about that song? Like the entrance, it didn't have a name, the entrance music song. I think they called it Double Drum. That was the name of it back then. So the band was like, oh yeah, like let's learn that. So they went out on the floor and they did like a 20-minute version of it. Like that was awesome, and the engineer, I can't remember if it was like Bill Sismic or one of those guys, like the big 70s engineers, recorded it all. And they came in and they listened to it. And it's like, this is great. Like we can't do it better than that. And he's like, yeah, but we can't put that on like one side of a record, So he started cutting, this was in the days of analog tape and razor blades. If you wanted to make an edit, like you cut the tape and then pasted it back together. So Edgar said at some point they had made so many edits that there were just like spools and pieces of tape like all over the control room. And he said Rick Derringer looked and said, man, you're going to have yourself a task putting this together like Dr. Frankenstein. And it was like, let's call it Dr. Frankenstein. No, like let's just call it Frankenstein, And then even the final version, there was a single edit that made the radio that I think was 3 minutes, the required length. But the version on the album, I believe, is 6 minutes plus. And later, because it was FM radio days, like you would hear that whole version on the radio. It's a great record. It's, it's like, if you haven't heard Frankenstein in a while, play it just to hear how great the band is, how tight they are, Yeah, I mean, the musicianship was really great in that band. There was also, I don't know if you remember, the guy who was Edgar sang a lot, but there was a guy named Dan Hartman in the band who was sort of the pop guy. And he wrote Free Ride, and Altamira, and he had a really sweet kind of tenor pop voice. Sadly, he died in the 80s, but, he had his own solo career. He had a really big hit in the 80s called I Can Dream About You. So there was a lot of great musicians in that band, Anyway, Edgar Winter, just, you have to admire a guy who's just like kept doing what he does, and he plays with a lot of people, and he's committed to just like carrying on his brother's legacy, like doing the blues stuff. So